Hi, this is Damien from AtHope, and I am an axiological atheist, which can simply be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. For me personally, I am a value theorist, and I approach, in a sense, all ideas from that vantage point. And so I'm here with a guest, and could you go ahead and tell us a little bit about you, and what do you do?
Hi, my name is Saumya. I'm from India, but all of you can call me Sam. That's what my friends call me. And I am an independent ethnographic filmmaker, which basically means that I do ethnographic qualitative research on different sorts of tribes of India, and I document or try to archive the research using audiovisual mediums, specifically filmmaking tools and techniques. So I am an ethnographic filmmaker, or some people can call it visual ethnographer also. So that's what I do. And I'm from India. I belong to a place near Delhi, the capital of India.
Wonderful. And it's nice to have you. And so you said, I know what ethnography is, but I'm not sure that everybody in my audience may understand. Could you please explain what it means to you?
Ethnography, in my understanding, or rather in simple terms, would be a study of any particular ethnic group. And when I say ethnic group, so of course, by the book it would mean specifically only studying the people belonging to a certain society or culture or certain ethnicity. But the way I see it, when we talk about an ethnicity or an ethnic group, we should not just limit ourselves to the people belonging to the group. We should also be focusing on the flora, fauna, or avifauna belonging to that particular geographical or social surrounding. So for me, that's what ethnography comprises of. It's a complex whole of all sorts of beings living in that particular location or space.
Yeah, that's a great thing. How I use ethnography, I know some people may not understand, but how I like to use it for me personally is ethnography to me is in a sense like ideas of the current culture. How I use that is I take that understanding and then sometimes I'll apply it to prehistory behaviors and try to show that this is a possible outcome of what these behaviors could mean by relating it. In other words, like in South Africa, there's a stone snake that's about 75 to 70,000 years old, and it was worshipped, I believe, by memory, for a couple hundred years or something like that, by burning stone arrow, or I think it's spear points, actually. Spear points under or near the snake. Anyways, so you would say, like, oh, how will we know what they're thinking? Well, if you look at the general culture, they believe, in effect, the whole mountain is, in a sense, relates to the snake. And but anyways, so it helps me take what they're thinking now, or and since they are continuing somewhat, probably, of what their culture was doing, then I can see what they do now and try to see if that relates somewhat to understanding the past. Because this is the thing that's real important for me, being someone who's a Westerner in a sense, and not in Africa or not in a certain culture. It's hard for us to see the mindset in their mind. In other words, like, put on their glasses and look at the world. It helps us understand, I think, prehistory for me, artifacts, and so that helps give a more of a substantiation than just the artifact itself.
Right. Precisely. Like when you talk about this, the continuum starting from prehistory to about the current period, I personally feel that's the reason I said that for me, ethnography means both humans and non-humans, and I personally feel even if we are starting from prehistory, like if we look at the different findings or rock paintings or any sorts of figurines, we can see there are many anthropomorphic figurines that were made at that point of time. And so we have to also understand, which gives us an idea or a hint that we cannot just focus on just humans existing from prehistory or prehistory times, we have to also involve the fauna or the non-human existence that exists from that period of time. Then only we would be able to understand what sort of a journey that has been made from prehistory to till about now, and how the journey has sort of diverged to different directions.
Right, and I think that's an excellent point. And it's one of the things that I use too, is the fact, like, there's an African tribe, the San Bushmen, I think it is, that they basically, in a sense, they're animist in how they approach plants. And I would never have think this as a Westerner to look at a plant and think it the way they do. But once I understand that that's how they think of it in a sense now as animists, I can look back at the behavior of possibly what they thought of plants and see them as less utilitarian and more religious. In other words, like if I saw a picture of a plant, you just drew a flower, I would think as a Westerner, oh, it could be love. Well, that may have nothing to do with what they thought. And that's why I think it's important to really be able to get into the ancient mind. To me, I don't see how you almost can't use ethnography to truly be credible.
True, absolutely. See, my current research, it is on the Tamang tribe. So the Tamangs are, just to give a brief, that they are spread across. They have their history, their roots in Tibet, the born religion of Tibet. Then they migrated to Nepal, and now from Nepal they.
Can you when you say stuff, can you say it a little bit slower? I know what the Bon religion is, and then can you explain it? Because most people, Bon comes originally from Bu, which is the shamanism of Siberia and Inner Mongolia and Mongolia. But once again, that still is something that I would have to explain for my listeners right now, because I don't want us just to have a conversation with just you and me. I want them to get benefit.
Yeah.
So go ahead and say it again. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. So you said that they're the people, and I guess you're saying in northern India, and that they practice similar things to the Bon Tibetan.
Yes, precisely. So the Tamangs in India, they are there in Nepal from Tibet. Their roots can be found from the Bon indigenous groups of Tibet, and thereafter, during the time when Buddhism in Tibet was under threat, there were people. They had to move to Nepal, and from Nepal they further on moved to, because of better jobs, when the Rana regime that was there, there was some political unrest. They had to move further to different parts of India. So they are mostly present in the northern eastern parts of India, which would be Sikkim, Darjeeling, and a little towards the plains, which is Assam and all. So this is the northeastern, partly eastern region of India. So my point is, amongst the Tamangs, there is no word or idea or concept of environment. There is no literal translation of the word environment. They do not see it as a separate entity, environment. So environment is seen as something in relation with their society, their culture, their kinship ties. So as to what you were saying, we were talking about example.
So are you saying that they're also being, in a sense, kind of totemistic besides just animistic? And
Yes, they're totemistic and animistic. So they do not have a separate understanding or definition of the word environment as to how we have in Western understanding or even Eastern understanding, a concept of environment. They do not have that.
Right,
so
which to me
is associated with.
I was going to say, which to me would be the animist part. The animist part, when you say that they don't have a different, in other words, what you're really referring to me, is the difference between sacred and profane. In other words, to me, anything before totemism, where you get taboo, in a sense, or the sacred and profane thinking, animists don't, in a sense, to me, parse the world into two separate things. There's not, this is sacred, this is not. Everything is sacred. where it's totemism that says, okay, only this is sacred, or these things are sacred, and then this is not. This is normal or non-religious or whatever.
So I think their beliefs are that's what my understanding goes. It's an accumulation of both animism and totemism, because they do believe in the transfer of energy from one form to another, as any animist would, but they also associate energy or associate forms of energy through different to different animals or plants, as mentioned in their culture or in their oral literature. But if we remove this association, this culture.
I'm sorry. Can you please explain what they think or what you believe they think exactly? Just because I don't know exactly what they think.
Okay, so they think that they do not like I said, they do not have an understanding, or there's no concept of environment. So anything that is a part of environment, anything which is non-human or even supernatural, is seen in context of the culture, which is explained in the oral literature, in their beliefs, in the tradition. So, but if these cultural associations are removed from the environment or the different elements of the environment, the understanding of environment would completely cease. So, which means their understanding as a whole of their culture and environment is the combination itself makes it very totemistic.
Right. So you're saying that in a sense they own it as a clan things, like area.
That's a part of it. That's a part of it. Like for example, there would be certain clans who would only sacrifice a certain animal, and the same animal may not be sacrificed in some other clan, or a certain kind of an animal would be sacrificed. Like you can't sacrifice a young one or an animal that's of a certain age. So even in totemism, so they I mean, if I understand correctly, I'm also in the midst of my research only, but this is what I understand. They cannot associate culture from environment. So
that's definitely animistic. But then if you say the environment is ours, just like I'm saying, like in a sense, people think it sounds like they don't do that, but they do that. Like Jews saying the Holy Land. Well, that's a totemistic ownership of land by a clan of people, in a sense.
Right.
To me,
right. Yeah, so I think something similar is there for the Tamangs also. They are because their religion, the Tamang Buddhism in itself, it's a combination of Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, and Bon religion. So intrinsically,
and could you explain to us what you think the Bon religion is, or if you know at all?
I mean, to be honest, I'm not the right person to comment about it, because as of now, I don't have much knowledge about it.
Okay,
but I do understand.
I'll give what I know then. To me, the Bon religion was the pre-existing shamanisms, and which also understand when I say shamanism too. Some people think like it's only a single set of religion by itself. To me, all the religions before, in a sense, what we consider the 4,000-year-old world religions today, anything before that, to me, sometimes is groupings of religion, like Legos or like toys, or something stacked on top of each other. It's in a sense, like if someone says, well, they're a shaman, they could be a shaman, totemist, animist, in a sense. So, but. So I do think that in a sense the Bon religion is considered shamanism, but to me it also has elements of animism and totemism in it. And
true.
Let me finish. So and the one of the big things that is important to me to see the connection of shamanism in the Bon religion with other shamanism is actually sky burial. It's because sky burial to me is a massive thing. I wrote in 2 blogs on it. and done a lot of research about the sky burial. The reason why this is important because there's evidence of sky burial at Cattle Hawk, a 9,000 at least year old city in Turkey. There's at Göbekli Tepe, the world's first temple. It's very likely that the two pillars in the middle circle could have been used as sometime for sky burial. And Native Americans who practice shamanism, totemism, animism also do sky burials. And so I was going to ask you too, do they do sky burials? Do you know what that is?
I do. I just had a very fair idea, not in brief, but as you explained it right now, I have not come across anything that defines that they do sky burial. Okay. But what I know is that they do not bury their dead. The dead is buried at a certain height at a mountain.
With birds,
so
right?
It would not be called sky burial, but
do they burial? Because when I mean sky burials, I mean non-burial. So sky burials, when you put a body, in a sense, generally either on the ground or above the ground, generally on mountains or high areas, or you make a scaffolding so it's high, and then the birds, in a sense, come and take the body. The belief is that the body is then taken, in a sense, to heaven. Or by the birds. In other words, the birds eat the body, and then because that they transfer it into the heaven or whatever.
So something like the Parsis do. Parsi culture has a similar practice of sky burial. They put the bodies. It's some sort of a compound they make, but the idea of birds coming and taking the body, the dead. So it's something similar. So
that's
at
least 13,000 years old.
Yes. So the Tamangs do not have this open sky burial practice, but they do. The reasoning is not mentioned so far anywhere in any of the books I've come across, but they do try to bury their dead at a certain height on a mountain. So I'm not sure of the reasons. Probably it has something to do with the spirit being able to have a release much easier. So Yeah, so that's the reason. But interestingly, the Tamangs, they like I said, they are intrinsically born. They practice shamanism or elements of born religion. They practice shamanism, but at the outset or extrinsically, they are Buddhist. They have their own lamas. They practice different sorts of Buddhist practices. Also, their shamanistic practices or Buddhist practices, in some ways, is present or is associated with different sorts of practices that are there in Hinduism. So, for example, in Hindu culture, we have something called as the Shera, which is where the goddess is worshipped for 9 days. So, which is around the month of October. Which is there in Nepal also by a different name. So, the Tamangs have participation in those festivals, which is very much associated or belonging more to the Hindu culture, Hindu religion, Hinduism. But their participation in it is not in the way as Hindus would do. Their participation in it is in a way that those who practice shamanism or those who practice Buddhism would do. So it's like a combination of three religion.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you think that they copied, in a sense, Hinduism, or do you think that it's just because it's an older element in the religion, like from the Harpan culture, going to both, or do religious transfer, or what do you think?
I think the participation into Hinduism is mostly to do with the socio-political situation of starting from Nepal, and so that's why they do not identify. They've not become Hindus, or they've not adopted Hinduism, or they are in a way trying to understand Hinduism or be participative in the culture, or let's say the festival itself, in their own way. Their own way.
Are they considered to be Indians, or are they considered to be transplant Nepalese or whatever?
So they are basically all these northeastern ethnic groups of they're called Kiruti peoples, which basically translates to people or the ethnic groups belonging to the Himalayas, which is Tibet, Nepal, Bhutan, some parts of India. So the Tamangs, the name translates to those who came on the horseback or a ghost horse. So the reason they got this name, because when they started coming from Tibet to Nepal on horsebacks because of Buddhism going down and looking for better job opportunities and as porters, different reasons, different social cultural reasons are there. So they're not Nepalese, because Nepalese would be more the Hindus. Nepalese are Hindus. So Tamangs,
I didn't know that.
Would not. Yeah, Nepali. I mean, see, if you see geographically, anyone living in Nepal might be just called a Nepali. And then there are, when you classify it in terms of ethnicity, be it Nepal or India, then there would be different sorts of classification. Like, for example, any person living in Sikkim, where I will be, Sikkim is is a state in India where I'll be doing my research. So anyone living there would be called a Sikkimese. But if I go into the cultural or ethnic classification, then there are Lepchas, Bhotias, Tamangs, Limbus, so on and so forth.
That's very interesting. So when you use the word Hinduism, could you explain what that means? Because to me, I know that the original word Hindu, if I believe, doesn't it mean like love India, and doesn't it come from European sources and not Indian sources, or not from the Indian continent?
So I'm sorry to cut you there. So, but see, the word Hindu comes from Indus Valley civilization. So Indus was
I know
the Greeks. Yeah, so Sindhu. So the Greeks used to pronounce it Sindhu. So from Sindhu, the English word became Indus, and from there the word Hindu came. Okay. And from there, further on, the word Hindustan came, and then Hinduism basically as a religion came starting from the pre-Vedic period. As far as my knowledge goes, it came from the pre-Vedic period.
That's a different issue. So you're saying its origin. I agree. The origin to me is the Hopper culture. But I'm not. But I'm not referring. I was just saying the term Hindu, isn't that term a European word? I thought onto. Because what I mean is that there's no Hinduism, like the whole of India, the continent has a lot of different beliefs from Tantra to
Yes. Yes, see, the word Hindu itself, it's partly European, which made it, which made it India. It's partly Persian, because that's how the Persians or the ancient Iranians pronounce it as Sindhu, or the Greeks had different pronunciation. So it starts itself. The roots start from Greek culture or Persian, Iranian culture, and then it sort of evolved into a more European name, and thereafter, and now it's sometimes called as Hindu Hindu, or it's, if you refer to the country, it is known as India. Right. But if you refer to in Hindi, it becomes Hindustan, which becomes, of course, translate as place where Hindus live. But we are talking about geographical explanation of the word Hindustan, Hindu plus Stan. Stan itself is a Hindi word which means place. So, but if we see Hindu, Hindu is a religion, and Hindu religion, and Hindu is a culture also, which I belong to. I belong to the Hindu culture. So my practices would be that of Hindu culture. My festivals would be that of a Hindu culture. But as a religion, I do not exactly practice Hinduism.
Could you go ahead and tell us what is it you personally think or believe?
About Hinduism?
No, just your own personal. You said you don't practice Hinduism. So I was saying, and I know you said before you're an animist. Can you explain what it is that you think or believe?
I've had my journey of being a staunch theist, a strong follower of God or different gods and goddesses, believing in religion a lot, specifically my own religion, Hindu religion. From that, I have been an atheist, not believing in any entity or form, any entity which sort of does not have an explanation to me. Probably that was in my younger days. So of course you do not tend to believe in a lot of things, or rather believe in many things. And thereafter, I was an agnostic when I started understanding from where things are coming from. So, and things that I did not understand, so of course I questioned it. And then eventually, as I started my ethnographic practices, my research amongst different tribes, I got an understanding. I got exposed to animism. I got an understanding of how animism works and what's so now. I
could you go ahead and tell us how you think animism works?
So I personally think, I might be wrong, but my understanding is, I think that there's an energy in everything that exists in this universe, or anything that exists just simply around me, that thing can have life in it. Life in the
so when everything has life, are you referring to rocks having life and dirt having life? I'm just wondering.
Yes, I'm referring to that also, because, like, for example, I think it's a very it might be a very simple example, but I think when I sit on a chair, I do feel connected to it, because the chair, like a wooden chair, the chair was made from a tree which had life in it. So I feel that life of a tree might have been, transferred into the chair. So I feel that's how for me, that's how animism works. I feel there's an energy in everything I do, even when it's a book. I feel there's an energy into it.
So do you feel this energy is magic, or in a sense, or supernatural, or is it just to you? You're feeling you're just referring to like the atoms and the fact that, as you said, that it used to have life. So it's the symbolic meaning of it, or are you? I want to understand.
So I would not call it magic. Okay. That some sort of magic has transferred life from a point A to point B. I would not exactly call it magic. I would not call it supernatural also. If it was supernatural, then probably even the chair would have been talking. I mean, that's what I think. So, yeah. So, but, when I say it used to have life, what I mean is that it had life in one form and it was a tree, and when it is transformed into a chair, it has life, but not in a literal sense of it breathing, but it has an association or attachment. Like I have an association or attachment with the chair, which makes me show more concern towards it, more care towards it. I just feel when we talk about life, one life is in the sense of something breathing, something living. But I also personally feel, which might be a little philosophical, but I also feel anything that talks about attachment or talks about empathy, compassion, all these things also in a way are ways of life.
So do you feel that, since it sounds like you keep saying you feel, you believe, so I'm just saying, or you think, I was going to say is, so do you think that it's, when you're referring to anism, you're referring to your own projection on the world or interpretation of the world? Or are you saying the world has these characteristics and you believe that you're seeing them or feeling them?
Well, these are my projection on how I see the world. This is how I understand animism. My understanding may be wrong, but this is how I see how animism works. This is my understanding of, or this is how I have understood it through research, through my work, or just a general belief. So this is how I have understood it. It's not necessarily that this is how things exist in the world.
Okay, so you're to me then it appears that you're referring to your phenomenology. In other words, like I feel like that friendly towards you, although I don't know you in a sense, right? But I feel like that you're being a genuine person, and you sound like you have care about others. So that makes me have an opinion of you, regardless of like the tone of your voice, or you know what I'm saying, the where you live in a sense. It really, I'm connecting with you on my feelings. I feel like you're a good person. So that's why I'm saying, do you mean animism like that? Like the fact that it is a reality that I feel something about you, whether it's true or not. I feel it.
Right, exactly. So for me, animism, it's like a binding energy. So like we have a binding energy going on between us, an energy that's connecting us. Similarly, that energy, that connecting, binding energy can exist between a human form or a non-human form, or two non-human forms. So
what do you mean by energy then? Because then I'm getting confused at what you're trying to say. So you keep using the word energy. What do you mean by energy, so that I can understand?
Energy for me, if you see, it would mean different in different contexts. But if I put it in the context of living form, anything that breathes, of course, then energy is known as what we know of in a general sense, energy existing in humans, or in different forms, in kinetic energy or molecular energy in different forms, or any other non-human forms also. But when we talk about energy in
so when you say energy in non-human forms, are you referring to animals? Are you referring to plants? Are you referring to rocks?
So I'm referring to non-human as in rather non-living forms. I should correct my words there. So anything, I'm referring to non-living things right now. So when we talk about energy, or when the way I think energy in non-living things is something which the way something can be used, or the purpose of something in the world or in the universe. So that becomes the energy of that particular thing. Like if you take a pencil, probably the pencil energy would be its ability to write, its ability to for a child to learn how to write.
So in that sense, energy then is just use. You're just giving a different label for a utilitarian purpose, right? Is that what you're saying? That in other words, like that's like if I said that my car is a beautiful woman. I don't really mean the car is a woman, just that I feel this emotional connection to my car and have, in a sense, giving it a mental projection of an anthropomorphic character. But I don't actually mean that it's a woman. Is that what you're saying? Like, in other words, you're using word to explain your experience of the world and how you emotionally relate to it, connect to it. Am I?
That's true. That's true. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm more focusing on I'm stressing on the connection that people feel, or one feels, with non-living things also, and the connection which is mostly not there. Sometimes there with the object in itself, and sometimes there with the use of the object.
You said sometimes there with the object. So sometimes the object has energy that doesn't come from you. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm trying to say is an object. There's an energy in the object. It might not be of any use to us. It might not be, like, for example, a gift from a loved one, which may just be a showpiece to be kept in the living area, in the drawing room, but it is not of any use to us. It's going to be there lying on near our sofa sets. So, but it's giving out energy because it is a mark of remembrance or nostalgia from a loved one or friend or lover or parents. But then if there's another object which can be used by us in any form, like a book, like a pen, like a cycle, like a car, so then there's a use to the associated purpose of the object. So there are two different objects. One, there's use to it, but in both the cases, both the objects, the underlying emotions are attachment, nostalgia, maybe compassion or empathy.
And I'm just saying, so, and when you feel nostalgia, empathy, you're calling that animism? Is that what you're saying that's animistic energy?
Yes, that for me is animistic energy.
Okay, so you're just using it in a sense as a cultural context for your feelings.
I'm not sure to call it cultural context because in probably if I go according to my own culture, Hindu culture, then...
Let me explain then. I'm sorry if I used the term in a different way than you were using it.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that if I say, there's people that say they're an atheist and they say that they don't believe, and there's people that say they're an atheist in a sense because they don't understand any religion, and so they just choose to not accept it. And my in a sense what I mean is there's two different people. One person in a sense just doesn't know and just can't trust, so doesn't believe. And then me, I've actually investigated and then don't trust and don't believe. So I mean, even though in the sense that it's two things, it's different. I feel like I have a stronger confidence in lacking of my belief because of trying to understand and actually addressing the different religions or beliefs. Like I'm trying to understand, your persuasion of animism, because I think for me it's important to understand other people, because I don't want to. There's a thing in philosophy called straw manning people, when you basically you build an argument that's nothing to do with the person you're talking to. And it's not that everybody can't fall into that. I just want to make sure that I try to be as well as informed as I can, and because I think that it is truly the understanding. Because to me, what we don't understand, we automatically have a tendency to want to fear. And things that we fear, we have this tendency to try to hate because it's uncomfortable. We don't want it around. We don't like. And the things that we hate, the problem with letting that unchecked is the things that we hate, we generally want to destroy. And the problem is that when we're positioned, especially towards people, then, we have to live together. It's one earth,
Right. True.
And I don't think that we really try to understand each other. I think that's
true.
And I think that when we do, we both can, like you and me, can both benefit from doing that.
That's true. That's true. I personally feel that at the end of the day, there is some sort of a correlation between all sorts of religion or beliefs that people have, but we just need to find those connecting points, the dots that connect us, the correlations that are there. We just don't want to find that correlation that exists because it's if you see, I mean, I read in your blog also and your YouTube video also the journey of religion as such. So there is an element of each religion present in each other.
Oh, yes.
So you can't. So Christianity has the element in Hinduism. Hinduism would have something in Islam, and so on and so forth, and animism and totemism. So there's a element of each other. We are belonging. That's what for me, that's another example of energy. We are existing in some form in each other, not just as humans. I think in non-human forms and even non-living forms, there is something existing of each other in all of us.
Well, I don't know when you mean non-human forms existing in us. Once again, I guess that you're talking about our emotional connections to each other, which I do think we
emotional connections to each other. Yes.
Which we and I like what I think is interesting is I'm a rationalist, so I really care about rational and thinking and everything, especially critically thinking. But it's funny how when I watched this. Documentary, or this guy was talking, he's a neuroscientist, and he was saying that there's no time that the mind is awake that it doesn't use emotions. So that really profoundly changed my thinking, because I realized that a lot of times the reasons why I have a problem understanding something, or it's the problem of helping other people understand me, is generally that emotions get in the way. It's not that we're not always having emotions. It's that I need to let them not hijack me.
True. Yes. That's true. I think emotions are cultural, very cultural. I think emotions per se, I feel, have to be studied much from a cultural context.
Oh, well, I do agree that what we have emotions about, the fact of having emotions is a human thing. But I agree, yes. What we have emotions about is completely different. I mean, if someone is Japanese and they get a bad report card, or something, their culture is more about education and shame. That person may even commit suicide. Where I'm from, dropping out in Southern California and gang-ridden areas, a lot of people just drop out of school. And
absolutely.
And it's not even I didn't drop out, but I mean it's not considered even that bad. I mean, where the thought of that in a different culture could be life-destroying. So, yes. Absolutely.
So I'll give a very quick example here. During my last research, the gods of Bastar. So the gods are one of the largest indigenous groups in South of Asia, and so my last project was on them. So my first day in the field, so we encountered a death ceremony, and we could see everyone is drinking their local alcohol, which is called maua, and they were all dancing and merrymaking, and there was music and the indigenous music that they have. So, and in my Hindu religion, Hindu culture, everyone weeps like crazy. Everyone cries their heart out, and there are especially in some subcultures, there's Hindu subcultures, there are women called for crying, for expressing grief. And over there, I was like, the first day, everyone is drinking, women are drinking, the men are drinking, the teenagers are drinking, they're dancing, they're laughing and all. So emotions over there. So I was like, how am I supposed to react to this? Because I have known that when someone dies, one is supposed to cry, or if not cry, show grief. Here, it's totally opposite. So the emotion itself becomes so cultural in nature.
I find that to be very interesting, because what it goes back to me, I'm an axiologist, which is a value theorist. It really goes back to value. What we value, and I always tell people, change your values, change your life. And in fact, I had a big value change. Every atheist generally does that stays an atheist, is that, they look at the God concept before being an atheist as having value. And then after an atheist as not having value. It's a massive value change. And it does change then how you perceive that word, just like you were saying, animism. It could be to someone that word means something, and to someone else who doesn't understand religion, that word may mean nothing. They'd be like, who's that? What does that matter? They're not understanding that they're probably already doing animism.
True.
So, because to me, if you believe in an afterlife, or you believe that there is, in a sense, a kind of a connection in life, then you're probably an animist, and to some extent.
True.
And so, so that would be pretty much every religion in the world is an animist, plus whatever else they are.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Every religion in this world has roots in animism. Absolutely true. We just sometimes we ignore it. Like sometimes I do have, not an argument, but a discussion with my family, and I try to tell them about indigenous religions, how they are animistic and sometimes then totemistic also, and then they would answer me, oh, that exists in Hinduism also, in our Hindu religion also. And then I have to explain them how things have come. So what's the correlation, and how animism somehow, somewhere down the line got forgotten, and even totemism got forgotten, and people start looking at religion in the form of what they know religion as of now in different contexts. Hinduism, even though, like for example, in Hinduism, we have worship of, like for example, Lord Hanuman. Lord Hanuman is a monkey god when translates to English, which is a very totemistic practice. But we worship Lord Hanuman in Hinduism. But if we see the roots, the roots would be there in animism and further on totemism.
Right. So I would say the monkey god would be, in the sense, animals were in a sense worshipped first as spirits or guides, which connects the fact of them being a spirit is animist. The fact that they can be used in a sense or connected to a clan is totemism. And then
totemistic,
and then shamanistic in the fact of the belief that it's a spirit animal that can work or intercede with a person.
Right, exactly. So when we do our chants or prayers of Lord Hanuman, that again becomes something like shamanism, because we are the pundits, the gurus, or general people are trying to connect through a higher form, spirit, through that,
which is shamanism,
through Hanuman. Yes, through shamanism. So yes. So that is sort of discussion I also have with many people, with my family also. But of course, the discussion always ends up nowhere, because it's so difficult to make people explain and understand these small nitty-gritties of how religious beliefs actually work.
Oh, trust me, I understand. That's what my whole book is going to be on, is deconstructing religion from before religion 1 million years ago all the way until 5,000 years ago. I want to deconstruct religion, not just to show, in a sense, what it is, but to teach people. I think that most people have, I believe, really profound ignorance when it comes to really understanding religion.
True. So this discussion suddenly reminds me of Sphinx. So the Sphinx is a very popular historical or cultural figure, everyone knows about it. But I'm not sure. Maybe there have been researches, but I personally would like to see a research which hints at the animistic and totemistic and more anthropomorphic understanding of Sphinx, because that's how I look at it. I think the roots itself, when they would have thought of making the structure, the roots are there in animism and totemism. And what was the root causes? What led them to make this suddenly? They decided to make this structure. So I'm not sure. So this is what I would want to see, someone to come up with some sort of a book or explanation or research or a documentary to help people understand.
Oh, I agree. I don't specifically work in Egypt, just Egyptology, but I do know that its ideas don't come, in a sense, from Egypt itself. You can see those ideas in the Berbers, which are in Morocco and North Africa. You can see those ideas in the fact of, and people don't realize, the first step pyramid in the world was not in Egypt. It was in northern Iran. And then also you have ziggurats before, which were in Mesopotamia, which were before, also a couple hundred years before, if I remember off the top of my head. I think 200 years, because I think it's 5,100 or something like that. Maybe 5,200 years ago is the ziggurat, and then I think it's 4,900 is the first, in a sense, temple built pyramids by the Egyptians, I believe, off the top of my head. But so you can see that it actually people don't realize that, in a sense, even further east in China, there is pyramids made out of dirt. And some with stone and stuff too. So, and the oldest one they have is 5,000, which is older still than the pyramids. So to me, it's a cultural thing that came from higher above. To me personally, and I've seen someone else talk about it too, there's mountains in almost where the Dasovian cave and all that. There's a certain area of southern Siberia that basically has a mountain peak that looks like a pyramid.
Oh, okay. Wow.
and it's the same. So they're saying too that to me, you see the beginning of Indo-European or Proto-Indo-Europeans was like the Yama culture before that, and which then later becomes the Scythians, who Buddha was considered to be a Scythian, which would make him in a sense. Some people say Scythians are from Iran, but if you ever look at the cultural thing of where the Scythians come from, it's actually from Siberia. They're from southern Siberia, and they're also a little bit in all the way to the Balkans and whatever. But they do. Not saying they don't go into Iran, but their major thing, they're not Iranian. So they may have. You could probably call them Syrio-Iranian, and the fact that they're from not Syria. How do I say it? It's from Siberia. I can't remember how they pronounce it, but. The culture is mainly up there. In fact, they were building like big stone structures, almost like Stonehenge. It's the same culture in a sense that went all the way over there. It's the same. They're hunter-gatherer. Well, I'm just saying they're hunter-gatherer shamans, and they started building something called kurgans. And they call you can look it up online. There's a thing called Kurgan hypothesis that has to do with the beginning of all Indo-European language. So those people built things that were like miniature pyramids. They would put like a stone box with a burial, then to build this mound up on top. Right. And I think that's starting I think 7,000 years ago. So from 7,000 to about 5, it's real big. But at that time, then you have the pyramid structures. I think all of this similar stuff is connected. Just like, to me, the oldest telescope in the world, in a sense, was one of these dolmen. I think it's 6,000 years ago. A dolmen. I think it's in Spain, or maybe it's Portugal. But anyways, it's all connected to this, and the fact that, to me, it's not really a telescope. They said they thought it could be looking at the stars. What I think is that the shamans in those areas believed that the stars at night were actually ancestors. Like they were spirits, like glowing, like you said, energy, the glowing energy at night. And so to me, when they look at the stars, especially to this thing, or they think like the burial is aiming to the stars, in a sense, like it's helping them, and it's like the pyramid. If you look at it, there's a spot inside where it's supposedly a shaft that shoots to, I think it's Orion or something, and it shoots to the stars. But I think is that is showing the connection of this belief that stars themselves are ancestors.
That makes a lot of sense. That does make a lot of sense.
So, and I think that all those, once again, and that go back to your statement. So, in a sense, that would be animistic thinking that stars are, in a sense, alive or used to be alive. That would used to be alive humans. And it would also be totemistic in the fact that not only they are alive, but some of those stars, not all of them, and that's why I think you get later in Mesopotamia and stuff, you get this astrology beliefs, because you're saying, well, it's not all stars are us, just some stars. These clusters of stars, these relate to us. That would be clan totemism in a sense, the fact of you owning stars as ancestors, as us.
Yes. So I think probably just to be on the lighter side, I think probably that's where the famous nursery rhyme "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star" comes from, because it starts itself as "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, how I wonder what you are." So probably it is just perhaps the roots are itself in the mother trying to or the child thinking, wondering who could be up there, if it's an ancestor or not an ancestor, if it's an ancestor known to the child or an ancestor of a different person. So
And then you have totemism, right? Which also then adds the element of that animal spirits are in the sky. Which is why, like, even the Greek myth and that, and even the Chinese, their calendar, in a sense, like the rat, the goat, so they're, to me, those are hinting at totemism. I'm like, wow, that sounds like totemism to me.
Yes, that's true. The animal spirits. I think similar sorts of beliefs are there even amongst Tamils also, and even the Gonds also. Gonds, Tamils are not. They don't practice totemism outrightly, but it does exist in their practices in some way. But the Gonds have a very strong practice of totemism. So they also practice totemism. They would have an animal as a totem, and also a plant or a tree as a totem. So they have a very strong practice of totemism. And
and to me, I would say that sounds like more older totemism. The fact of adding plants, the plants issue. Because Africans do that with animism, and I know not that many places that I mean, I'm not saying I've read everything, but from what I have read, that it's less common to be a plant than other things. But I have heard that also you can even say like thunder is or some kind of a natural thing, but those are even less.
Precisely, the totemism that is practiced in the Gonds, which is I just spell out the name. It's Gonds. That's how the word itself comes from Gondwana land. The people living in Gondwana land. So, but
and what part of India is that, so that people can know?
Okay, so Gondwana land itself comes from the supercontinent Gondwana.
I've done a lot of research, and I have no clue where you're talking about.
Okay, so Gondwana, if I remember it correctly, it comes when the supercontinents Pangaea and what was you would have to help me with the other one. There was.
So help me out. So here's the in a sense, if you broke the Indian continent up into 4 sections, which section would it be in? So I could know. Is it in the southern?
So ideally speaking, the entire India should be called Gondwana land, because the Gondwana land did not. Yes, so the Gondwana land was just not India. Gondwana land, when before any sort of geographical breakups or happened and all.
Like Pakistan?
Yes, it was Africa, it was Asia, there was, like we had Antarctic plate, Asian plates, African plates, different geographical tectonic plates I'm talking about here. So different sorts of plates. So Gondwana land that's why it was called supercontinent, because it had a massive region. It was a massive region.
Are you talking about before it hit and became the Himalayas, before it crashed into, is that what you're talking about?
So this is you could say this is much let's say up till the late ice age and all, or maybe even after the late ice age.
Can you say it in like numbers? I don't like to use those words because they're too general. They're not, because I mean, like you could say the Younger Dryas, and there's the Upper Paleolithic and the Middle Paleolithic. I don't like talking like that. I like saying 600,000 years ago, 300,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. It's easier to understand to me. So can you?
I don't know what exact number to put it, but I would probably give it some. I may be wrong, but I think it should be around 150,000 years ago. Okay. And since after that, that's the reason when I studied about Gonds, I found that they had numerous similarities with different sorts of tribes that are there in Africa, and even geographically also. Like there are something called as termite mounds, which are there in the jungle. So those similar mounds exist or still exist in savannas in sub-Saharan Africa and all. So, and same things exist in the location or the areas where the Gonds are. So the reason, so now when we see the Gonds, they are just there. They just belong more to the central or central part of India, and the other surrounding areas touching the central part. So probably the reason that happened is, one of the reasons can be like when we talk about the out of Africa theory, one understanding is that they came via sea route from Madagascar, and from south of India they probably would have gone to central India. So that is the reason only a certain portion of India is now more known towards as belonging to the Gonds or belonging to Gondwana land. Or even if we understand that we follow the other theory, coming the out of Africa movement happening from east of Africa, from Egypt, and then from maybe Central Asia and all that region.
I personally think that there was like almost 3 waves. That there was an older one that went the southern route. There was another one that goes up in through, like you said, through Egypt and down. I think another one came from Siberia straight down all the way to Malaysia.
So directly from Siberia, or like Africa to Siberia? No,
I don't follow. Okay, so what I mean is the movement of people is not into the Indian continent. I don't think happened in one wave only.
Yes,
I think. I mean, much later, of course, many other. I'm just saying that to me, what you're referring to. There's 3 theories, and I think they're all true. That's the issue. I think that somewhere about 80,000, because we know there's 80,000 years ago, there is a body or a DNA from southern China. So they were already venturing out very early. And even there's burials in Israel at 120. There's also in North Africa leaving at I think it's 150 or something. But they didn't continue. But I do think that we were venturing out, not always in like
absolutely.
Not like it's herds of people, all saying, "Hey, let's all do this." But I do think that there was, like I was saying, I'm saying my theory is that there's 3 different ways, and they all happened. So there was one old one comes through, in a sense, goes all the way to Australia. It leaves people a DNA all along. That's the oldest one, I think, that's very animistic. And then I think another one came through and got through Egypt and stayed a little more up there and then migrate slowly down. Then I think one went up to Asia and then got to totemism and animism and brought totemism and animism and shamanism back down. So it already was, to me, by at least 60,000, probably 65,000, I think, there was animism on the continent of India. Then I think that totemism and shamanism, totemism to me starts in basically France almost. It's like France, Spain, and I'm trying to think what the country is next. I'm not at the top of my head, but anyways, but it starts there, then it moves to Siberia, and then once it moves to Siberia, totemism turns into shamanism totemism. Then I think it goes from there over to the Americas and south to, like I said, all the way to, because we know that by 35,000, the DNA of Siberians and Asians reaches Malaysia. There already was people there, though, because there was people there at least 45,000 years ago that were, in a sense, probably the Africans, the original animists. Then the totemist shamanists come, and I think at that time is when then India gets totemism, animism, and shamanism. So I think before, since 35 is in Malaysia, I would say it's probably 40 or something, or maybe 30, late 30s, or sometime around there is when I think that India got it. So also there's evidence of totemism, shamanism going back to Africa to me, because in North Africa gets a population from Spain and up there in Europe coming back into Africa by about 30,000 or 30-something, maybe 35, 32, can't remember. I have it written down. But so I think that is the time that before that, I think it was mainly animism and kind of pre-totemism in Africa to me. And then but Europe is where totemism, I think, became stronger. I think this is one of the reasons why, to me. You have Africans going and meeting other people. What I don't mean is not just other humans. I mean non-humans. Meeting up with the Neanderthal, and because here's the issue too. Why I say that totemism is that old. Totemism has this thing called incest aversion or anti-incest. Generally, that's a very totemistic thing. That you don't have sex with family, or generally it could also mean members of the clan, non-family. You still can't do it, and even to death, getting killed in some totemism because of it, or the threat of death, whether or not you get punished totally, is up in the air to some totemism. But the whole point is, by 40,000 years ago, there's evidence in Europe that they were doing the behavior of incest aversion, which is weird because that's very old to be caring about who's having sex with who. But to me, that's in a sense, to me, I see that as genetic evidence of the belief, because to have a large portion, not just one or two people not do it, but like the majority not doing it, shows that it's a cultural thing that's being taught. For it to be that widespread. And so it's real important to me to understand. It does. I don't care where it happens. It could all have happened in Africa, just so people know. It's not like I care about it happening in Europe or in Siberia. I could really care. It could all happen in India. I'm an atheist. I don't really care. I just want to know the truth. And I want to understand, because then I can start to see why things are the way they are, or how they got here.
That's true. Even amongst the Gonds, like during my field research, I've not come across the non-incest related beliefs there. But
they don't have that there. That's interesting.
I didn't come across it. Probably some regions might have, because
I would ask if I was you, because it's such a thing connected to totemism worldwide. It's such a
So I was coming to that. So not that, but they do. They are very particular about the way they treat their totemic ancestors, the plants or animals, and they are very particular about it and how they treat it. Probably maybe the treatment itself comes from what you're talking about now. Being very anti-incest and not having sex with any family members. So that's because the way they treat it like a family, the totemic ancestor as a plant or an animal. And interestingly enough, the rock paintings, which I also documented in my film. So there were examples, or there was the rock paintings included different sorts of totemic ancestors that are still worshipped, that are still believed to be the clan gods or clan totemic ancestors of different clans. And those rock paintings, as the locals mentioned, or as different some archaeologists had come and done some sort of a carbon dating over there. So it was believed to be around 35,000 years old.
Right. See, and listen, that's when I told you that about that time is when I think that the stuff came from Siberia and entered into the Indian continent. And I agree with you. So that's what I'm saying. The fact that I know where they came from, somewhere over in the area of the Decinovan cave, and then they came down, probably down the mountains, because if you look at a map, you can see they could come just down the mountains. That's why the people from Tibet and like you said, they actually have a lot of DNA from the Desovians. And the Decinovans, I should say, maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
But like I said, then the fact that we know that the DNA hits all the way at 35,000. In fact, there's the first rock drawings of totemistic animals are 35,000 years old in Indonesia. And what's interesting, though, is they're not till 30,000 or 28,000 in Australia, showing to me that they came from the north. Like you said, they came.
That's
You
true.
see them in up north, and you in Europe, then you see them in India, then you see them in Indonesia, Malaysia, whatever, in East Timor, and then you see them, in going from then to Australia. If you follow the art, the time of the art, then you follow the belief system that followed that.
That's true. That's true, but interestingly enough, in the oral literature, oral culture of the gods, they believe that what the stories go, that their ancestors came via the sea route. Like for example, there are rock paintings of a tortoise, and which of course would not be a tortoise, would have been some sort of the ancient species of belonging to a tortoise. Some sort of taxonomic species that existed when the paintings were made. So their belief is the ancestors came via the sea route, that would be from Madagascar to south of India, and then further on from south of India is the lower region of India, and then to central India and into the northern India. So this is what their oral histories or folklores talk about.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
yes.
Well, no, and I think, well, obviously, just think it. The fact that someone could get to the to Australia or even to the Americas, it's believed too, and that they were using boats. I mean, just think of this. That's not even impressive. What's impressive is there's evidence of pre-humans using boats and getting to Australia or getting to the other islands. I mean, like the Lost Flores with the little hobbit people.
Right. That's true. That's absolutely true. And just another thing which I found very common in the three ethnic groups that I've researched so far about the Gonds and the current Tamangs, and the previous one being the snake charmers, which are the Kalbelias or gypsies of Rajasthan area. So all three of them have a very strong connection. They have a very one of the prominent figures of gods is the god Shiva, or god Shiva, and they do they
see that as an ancestor? Just wondering.
So
like God Shiva as an ancestor, or do they see him as a separate thing?
In the gypsies, the Kalbelias, or the snake charmers, they see it as so they see it as some forms as an ancestors. Then that is where the whole idea of incarnation comes amongst them, and they see it as a separate, like a god entity also. And then there are gods who see a Shiva. Of course, there's a different name to Shiva amongst them, as an ancestor, or also as a superior energy. So even the same thing goes in Tamangs also. The Tamangs see, because when I look at their stories or the oral literature or whatever is mentioned in different researches, they are not referring to Shiva or in a godly form. The stories, the way they've been told and narrated, it seems that he is looked upon as another, maybe a superhuman, but something more than flesh and blood. So it's an interesting combination of looking at the Trinity as as a god also, and also as a clan ancestor, which makes him more relatable to them, to their culture.
Well, in a sense, I think that Christianity does that too. I mean, Jesus is the clan totem, in a sense, because he's not, in a sense, like the God. It's like a thing that represents the God. Which is what a totem is, in a sense. It's a physical representation of something else that you have an associated emotional and, what you feel is genetic almost, or, ancestor connection to. But I mean, if you tell people that Jesus is a bad person, they're going to take it personal. they're not taking it as, oh well, this figure that was, there's it's more of a personal relationship. I think that some of that though is just in human nature. That I'm sure, like, just how we are. Like, now that you've seen my face and talked to me and interacted with me, your opinion about me will be different than it probably was before we started talking. And so, and that's not because of, it's just because it's human. We have biases, we don't view the world in a sense how it is. We like to view it through our phenomenology, how we experience it.
That's absolutely true. But it would be so difficult to make people understand that Jesus or Allah or Krishna or Rama or any god for that matter is merely that someone that existed in flesh and blood and was a clan ancestors. And because for some reason they must have got responsibility of spreading what God is all about or what energy is all about, and that's how we started praising them as gods or goddesses.
Yeah, well, I think speaking of goddesses, to me, people don't understand that when you look at the prehistory religion, women play most of the part.
Absolutely.
Like nowadays, I feel like that people think that women are an add-on. Well, before they were the main show. It was women plus here's some men.
That's true. So does Christianity have any goddesses? I mean, I'm not really aware about.
Well, in the sense, the Catholic, belief, in a sense, is saying Mother Mary, and in that sense, they're worshiping the divine feminine or whatever, sort of, by saying she's perfect. I mean, because they call her the Virgin Mary, but if you have a child, you are not a virgin anymore. So I'm referring to, it doesn't matter if their story was even true, that somehow they were inseminated in a way that was kept their virginity. Once you have a baby, it's called nature.
Right. Of course. Absolutely. So, but it's not as extensive as how we have in Hinduism. Like
no,
many goddesses.
And let me tell you what I think about that is, if you look at, this is my thinking, that monotheism should truly be called monotheism, in man we trust. Because there's not as far as I know, and if there is, and maybe very few, but to present day, there is not a monotheism that reports to say that the female is the goddess, that it's monotheistic. And I mean, maybe someone could make one up, but if you look at all the major monotheistic religions of the world, they are male-based, male-centric, male ideal, including Sikhism, who tries to say that they are somehow beyond that. Liars. Because of several things. I have a blog on the sexism of Sikhism. Because, and it's not that I want to attack Sikhs, I'm just saying it is a fact that all the gurus in Sikh are male. Every single one. And I think there's 10. Plus, of course, they consider the book itself a guru. But and Guru Nanak, the person who supposedly invents the thing, is also a male. And so, and then what's interesting too is the word for the deity in Sikhism is to me a loan word from Hinduism of a goddess that they say is both male and female or no gender. Well, the original word was a female goddess, so I don't know how you're saying it doesn't have a gender. So that I think, though, that issue of removing human value from women is something that monotheism not just exemplifies, but promotes. In general, most monotheism promotes women's lack of equality, not equality.
Exactly. So recently I visited a museum. It was a terracotta museum. So there was
I saw that. I liked that. I shared them.
Yes, a fantastic display of INR cult. So INR is mostly, I just got to know about him recently. So he's basically, you could say, like a clan god. He was a protector, or like a god, a protector of villages in Tamil Nadu and Kerala, this is again south of India. So when I read about it, there was a blog where it mentioned that the belief in INR, or the practicing or worshipping of INR, or him becoming a clan god, it started mostly at the time when society started dissociating from female worship, and when female worship sort of started converting into more male dominated or male oriented worship, or in itself when the worship, or when God, or when the so-called energy itself got gender sensitized.
Well, it's interesting too to me. I think it starts in totemism. In other words, to me, the original totemism, this is my belief, I don't have proof of this, but the original totemism, because see, there's two kinds of totemism. There's what's called individual totemism, and then there's what's called clan or group totemism. So to me, I think the individual totemism is first. The individual totemism is male and centric. It's not. They're gonna call it perennial, whatever. It follows for the father's line and stuff, to the grandfather, whatever. Where the clan totemism I think happened when shamanism happened. This is my thought. That clan, in other words, the people went from Africa and they go up there and they find that the Neanderthals, and they mate with them, and they finish going into Europe and stuff, and they have this now opinion of there's a them. And that means we're different. And I think that's kind of like to me, the thought that why that it's possible that Neanderthals could have inspired that, because they met something that was not us. And to me, it's that us and them. It's in other words, what I mean by that is like a man generally looks at a woman not as an us, but a them. And so it's that separation, right? It's that separation. It's that removal of you is like me. Like if I say, and people do all the time. They would say, "Well, I'm more Caucasian than someone else," or "I'm from America, so it makes me different," or I was raised in Christianity, so I'm different. Truly, all that is to me cultural stuff. I'm not really different than you. I'm just another fellow human on this earth, that's trying to get by. So to me, it's all those things. It's that all those labels. It's not that labels are bad, because labels identify things. It's how we internalize labels.
That's true. That makes a lot of sense. In fact, as you're talking right now, I mean, I personally think that individual totemism, I agree to, but as you were talking, I could understand more clearly. It would have started from the time of Neanderthals, and I just feel that probably it got more promoted as things like agriculture and domestication started happening.
Well, that's to me when paganism happens. At 12,000, I think, is the beginning of paganism. Yes. And paganism, once again, is not like people need to understand, it's not like paganism invented something new. Ha! All that paganism is to me is it's an animistic belief of the world. It's a totemistic practice with rocks, things, whatever. It is a shamanistic belief that you can intercede with the world, and then you add gods. That's it.
Right.
You add gods to all the other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And so me, like if you know about Ramayana has Ram, Lakshman, and Sita, and they were sent to exile. That's what the books, the Hindu religion or Hindu culture stories say. They were sent to exile by the stepfathers, and also Ram and Sita and Lakshman. So, but I personally, and they existed. Then there are in the stories itself. There are there are apes, great apes, and other form types of primates close to humans. But people look at it from a very religious perspective. I personally, and there are some other friends of mine who are anthropologists, we feel that probably it's not Ramayana or Ram, Sita or Lakshman. It's how humans and Neanderthals or even primates that are similar to humans, they existed. That's how they existed. But somewhere down the line, as they move forward, like in the stories it goes, Rama defeated Ravana. And Ravana comes from down south, and which is Dravidian culture and all. And so possibly I believe that I don't have any evidences or proofs to it, but I feel that Ravana itself was perhaps Neanderthals, and the Rama and Lakshmana and Sita were the Homo sapiens, and that everyone coexisted with the other great apes and even the chimpanzees and other forms of primates which are close to humans. And as time has progressed, somehow people remember or are more aware about Rama, Lakshmana, the male forms, or of the Homo sapiens, and or of the Ravana, but also of the animals that existed, the great apes and the chimps. But somehow Sita, or the female form, has lost in these entire cultural transitions that have happened across, religious transitions that have happened across ages.
Well, yeah, I think that it's intentional. It's worldwide in the sense that, so to me, like I said, to me the beginning of women's oppression starts at totemism. Mm-hmm. The fact that you break up us and them, there's a difference between you and me. It's that sacred and profane. It's that but that's not. That they weren't sexist to me then. They still probably acted somewhat egalitarian. I'm referring to, though, it's the thinking. It's like I talked to this other neuroscientist from India, and he said that some people are not human, and I said wrong. They're always human. They're just not acting at the highest of their humanity, in a sense, or they're acting very low in their humanity. And so to me, I tried to explain to him, it's the fact that you're still a human that I can then hold you accountable. If I say you're not a human, well, then it's not your fault. You're not a thinking, caring being. You shouldn't be held accountable. We hold you accountable for hurting people because you are human, and I expect better of you. And I know you can, so then I can demand better of you. If I don't like that a dog attacks someone, but do they really know? Are they really, moral agents, in charge of their behavior? Not really. But a human starts killing people or bites somebody, we have to address that.
That's true, and funny also. That's funny. I don't, honestly speaking, I don't understand how people can be classified into being human or not being human. I think we are all humans. We all are on a different spectrum of being humans or humanity.
Yes, right. So the fact of a dog doesn't turn into a human, nor does a human turn into a dog. But you could act in a way that I would think is lower than a dog it's your behavior. But like I said, the reason I can hold you accountable or be irritated by your behavior is because of the expectation of not doing that. True.
That's absolutely true. In fact, I just little off the tangent, but about a year back, I saw this YouTube lecture or recorded lecture of I think he was a biological anthropologist. So he was trying to explain the concept of being state. When, like, as humans, you are aware about your being state, that you exist. You're aware about it, most of us. But a dog or an animal is not perhaps aware about his or her or its being state, that it's a dog. So,
I would say it in the way that I think that animals act in immediacy. We do this thing of long-term planning. We think about when we're going to die. We think about like 20 years from now. We think about if our child is not even born, we already think about their college. I mean, or whatever, or their cultural things, what they need to know to survive, or their spouses. We're already thinking towards, they haven't even been born. We're already thinking about their spouses. This is something the animals, to me, do not do.
They're spontaneous. Spontaneous. Yes.
Right. It's like a bee stings you. It's not because they're angry. It's because of just the impulse because if you pick them up without them being scared, they won't sting you. So it's not really how we would maybe see it.
That's true. The impulse is more in animals. And I think in humans, impulse becomes very social and cultural. I think somewhere down the line, impulse has stopped being humanistic.
True. Speaking of that, could you tell us some of your favorite things you've learned in your research so far?
In my current research?
Yeah, or your past research. I mean, I'd like to hear some
interesting things.
Yeah, that you really enjoyed and you thought were interesting.
So the interesting things would be, for example, my first research was on the Kalbelias. They're the gypsies living in Rajasthan and some other states in India. So my focus was on the Rajasthan, a particular place in Rajasthan, Jaisalmer, the desert area. So they used to, it's not there, it's not very prominent now, but they had a practice of, like we have dowry system in India. So in dowry, amongst the gypsies, they used to be given, they're nomads, so they used to be given a donkey and a dog. So the donkey for helping them with the movement from one place to another, and the dog because they still live in hamlets and open spaces and all.
Protection.
Sometimes they have little a better structure of bricks and all. So. Which is used during rains or winters or in extreme climates. And there was a dog, so dog was their protection. So this was very interesting that they gave something as a dowry which would be useful, which would have more use. They did not give like how we have in my culture. Sometimes there's cash, there's jewelry, and there are household items and all. So for them, a donkey and a dog was the most essential because they wanted to make sure that the daughter that went to a different family had a comfortable life, was protected by a dog, and when she got pregnant, she didn't have to travel on foot. She could use the donkey as a source of transportation. Mm-hmm. So this was one interesting thing. And another interesting thing which I came across in Kalbelias also, though they say they are Hindus, that's what they say, they practice Hinduism because they're followers of Shiva, but they bury their dead. Mm-hmm. And in Hinduism we cremate. So when I asked them, why do you bury the dead? So one of the reasons they gave is, of course, of poverty and of course there is limited firewood, so they can use the firewood that exists either to for food as a fuel, or they can use it to cremate their dead. So which
1 second again. So in a sense, to me, you can see some of that cremation. To me, depending on how it's done, it can almost be the same as almost like a sky burial. The difference being, instead of birds taking the body away to the sky, the flames do it.
Flames are taking the body away. Exactly. Flames are taking the body away. That's what cremation happens. And in Hinduism, after the cremation is done, again, in the males, only the males somehow have the right to go and see the cremation or participate in the cremation. Once that is done, they have to
which is totemism. The thinking that some things are okay and some things are not. And I agree. Individual totemism sounds like with the fact of the male centric or more male centric.
male-centric. In fact, this last year itself, one of my paternal uncles passed away. So it was the first time I participated in someone's cremation, and the experience itself was I don't know how to explain it. It was exhilarating. It was very different. It's difficult to explain in words, but the feeling itself was very, very different. To be able to somehow break those cultural or social norms that exist, and to see it purely in a form of an energy. Me not being as a female over there, or as a girl belonging to my family, and I being there as a person, as an energy, and seeing another energy being converted into different form and being cremated. And so that was the emotions that went through me. So coming back to the Kalbelia, so they do not have, so they bury their dead. So this is the reason they do it. But I somehow feel that when we talk about Kalbelias, they are, I think they are a mix of Dravidian and Aryan or old Iranian people, and Dravidians buried their dead, and their their ancestry can be found from people from tribes from Central Asia, who again mostly bury their dead.
Right. Which again, like I said, I totally think that Asians, and I think it happened probably more than once, that Asians interacted with people from that area, from India and from Tibet and from all that, Nepal.
That's absolutely true. So this is about the Kalbelias, and I did mention about the Gonds, the merrymaking they have during the death ceremonies, and interestingly, the weeping happens during different functions or ceremonies that they have. So there's an ancestor worship that happens. Let's say it's a birth ceremony or a marriage ceremony. They call their ancestors of the family or one ancestor, and then there is some sort of a special ritual or a very brief one though happens wherein they weep, they mourn, they're remembering. So the weeping, the mourning does not happen when the person is actually dead. It happens during ceremonies, which I feel was
that's interesting.
Yes, exactly. So they are letting the spirit go when the person dies, and they believe and they always have different forms, because normally what happens in the Gonds that before a person dies, the person lets the family members know if they want to be remembered in a certain form. So sometimes there would be figurines made of clay or mud, it would be earlier. So it is believed that the ancestor would be there in some form, or it can be in the form of a tree. So the person dying actually, or in the form of an animal. So the person that's how the belief goes. Which
is an interesting belief, going back to cremation as far as totemism is concerned, because actually in Papua New Guinea, where they're definitely totemist, they actually, I've seen one they recently did, but they had mainly before, they would smoke the people. In other words, they would put them in a house, and then they would build a fire, and it would all become smoke, and they would smoke dry them almost like beef jerky. Just saying. So it's kind of funny, to me, but I mean, it's their belief. But I'm just saying that it's so odd to me. It's like, wow, you just turned a person into beef jerky. That's odd. But
that's interesting.
But what they do in a sense, they're making a mummy. But what they're really doing is they're saving the clan ancestor's body. Okay. Which I think is, and then they actually would put them in baskets or in chairs until they totally rotted away, and they would go and talk to them, and which is interesting. But I think that goes back to the fire thing. I think
that's true.
The smoke, I think, to them is part of the fire, and there's also fire there, and I think that they see the smoke in a sense as entering the body or whatever and changes it. I mean, it turns the person into something different than, well, they won't decay. So it's doing it is doing something special to them. But it's really removing the water.
True, absolutely true. So it's like we spoke about sky burial in reference to birds, and then we spoke about sky burial in reference to the cremation, the fire, the flames taking the spirit away.
Yeah, I'm going to send you my 2 blogs on that so that you can see what I'm talking about.
Yes,
sky burials.
Yes, I will go through it after our conversation. So, and amongst the Gonds, they have it's not prominent anymore, except in certain areas in deep interiors of the forest, and also they have a practice of they have a megalithic culture. They used to put megaliths of the vertical stones, or sometimes there are wood carvings also. So I think when we talk about maybe spirit being able to rise up in the sky or finding its way out, so it is this putting up megalithic structures. It is their way of letting the spirit out in something of similar context of birds or the flames in cremation.
Right, which goes back to me to animism, like even you're talking about stone carvings. See, how I would look at a stone carving, let's just say of an animal, I would just think, oh, look, art. But that's not how I was drawn. That's not why. To me, if you look at the fact of the totemism, and I've seen, I read some stuff. I can't remember if it's from Australia or Africa. I can't remember now. But they talked about when rock art is done, they think the rock in a sense is already alive, and they're just making the mark, and then to show the animal's place in a sense inside the rock. So it's the shaman, in a sense, they think through like a spirit trance or whatever, is seeing something, in a sense. So it's more than just art, is what I'm saying. We look at it as just art. It's more religion totem or, a spiritual connection than just art. I'm not saying, this is the problem though, I'm not saying every piece of art is religion from ancient stuff. I think that sometimes there's different reasons. Like, in fact, that a lot of times the people don't realize like the handprints. I know one thing, I think it's in France. Can't remember. But anyway, somewhere in Europe. And there's handprints, and they figured out it was mainly women. I think it's like 80% female. That blew them away. They thought only men did that. Then they found smaller handprints of children. So women and children were in these caves making handprints. And so, but I think it goes back to the thinking that, I don't know the whole world, but a lot of Western thinkers only think in a sense in a male mindset. Like men did religion and men had these purposes. Forgetting that half of the gender of a human is not man.
That's true. In fact, the gender itself is not in binary.
No, it's not. No, I agree with that too. Well, I'm genderqueer, and I'm mildly intersex.
Yes.
So I have biological things that make me a little bit different than just male, and then I have mentally, my brain doesn't just think in just male type of. I don't like any sports. There's a whole bunch of stuff I don't like. Everything about me, how I look, does not really. I don't ride motorcycles. I don't. I like poetry but I'm also odd in the fact that I'm not just that. I can act male. It doesn't. I just act myself. Is really what it is. People can genderize what they think about what that is, but to me. The most important thing, like you said, what I'm pointing out is that this thinking that it's only male and the only good thing, like they used to think like only women, did like a helping thing in religion, and that's just absolutely false. The oldest shaman in the world is from Siberia, and it's 31,000 years old approximately. It even has
that's true.
I mean, then the next one is in Israel, 14,000 to 12,000, and that's also female. Then there's one in Germany, and it is also female. I mean, female. You can't say, it had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, look at Venus figurines. I mean, Venus figurines is the best example. Why would the people that existed that time be drawing or be carving shapes of women in different forms? Someone in the fertility period, someone not in the fertility period, but in different forms, because that was the way of representing maybe energy. That is because they believe. I think that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that those original, some people call those goddesses. I don't agree with that. Those were not, to me, not goddesses. To me, goddesses doesn't happen until 12,000. After 12,000, to me, gods are after 7,000. But animals were worshipped in a sense before female. There's a 70,000-year-old stone snake in Africa. The first figurine made of ivory is actually a lion man looking figure. It is not innocent. But I think this is the problem, though. I think that animals has to do with totemism, and I think that the fertility stuff is more to do with paganism. Now, saying that I think that, in other words, I think it's at 35 where there's or 40 almost over there in Hausfels, Germany. And it's a female figurine, but it's worn on the neck. It has like a little hoop on it instead of a head. It has like a little thing to wear as a little charm. It's a little and to me, I think it has to do with hunting magic. In a sense, these were hunter-gatherers, people that were shamanistic totemists, and the figurine I think represents like bounty because it's fat and it's got big breasts and stuff. And with no arms, no legs, it's basically just representing like abundance, like you can have stuff. And so I think that's going to the fertility of just that our hunt will be good or things will be good. It's just that like more of an abstract, I think, thing because you can see its use, the way they use it. Because I have a biggest problem if it's a goddess. Why is it not always the same? It goes all over the place, and they keep making these figurines, but they make them different shapes. And also, people don't realize it's not like they only did ones that were sexually available in a sense. They do young, they do sexually available, they do mothers, they do grandmothers. So that's. I think there's, in a sense, because I read a person who did a whole article as a female, and she studied all the figurines and classified them and things to figure out, is this just sex? Because some people say, oh, well, it's just naked women. Yeah, but they're not sexualized naked women. We have to stop this thinking that naked is bad. Back then, who says it's bad? It's not. You're born naked. I mean, it's not. So, children will run around naked. We don't naturally have any aversion to nudity. Look at all the like tribes in the Amazon. They walk around naked. It's no big deal.
True, absolutely true.
That's all a later add-on that fear in a sense of because really if you see nudity, the thought is just like the Muslims covering up women. The thought is that a man, because they're not talking about women, because even Jans, look, Jans will be totally naked, not all of them, but I mean there's a branch of Janism where the males are naked, but they do not believe women can be naked because they don't believe that a man can control himself in a sense if he sees a woman naked, which I find is just ridiculous. Well, you guys must have no character. I've lived at news resorts before. I didn't feel any need to go and hurt anybody. I mean, you're more so to me, it's almost like they blame their own desire for their bad behavior. Yeah, I desire to sometimes, hit people when they piss me off, but that doesn't mean I do it.
That's true.
I mean, so feelings. This goes back to the feelings, like you said about animism. Just feeling something is an internal thing. It may even be internally true to you, but that does not mean that internal thing has any representation for others in the world. And but I think it goes, so what I'm saying is that all these different religions have these different elements, right? And my goal is to try to truly see them and see how they connect and see the why. Why do they do this? And that's why I really appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate a lot ethnography, because I feel like it helps tie in some of the understandings, because otherwise, if I just approach it from a Christian white, male perspective from the West, that's not possibly going to know everything.
Yes, true. You'll be stuck in the perspective then. Yes, absolutely true. And for example, I would have not known that how Lord Shiva is the way he exists in all across different tribes, and he's seen as a god, as an energy, as a clan ancestor. He's seen in so many different forms, because that's the reason I always tell people I come across, people younger to me precisely, to do ethnography, because it is only ethnography, field research, that is going to help you understand religion from a very cultural perspective, how culture and religion are related in an ethnic group, and how they are very different entities.
Well,
Not necessarily.
And then for me, I also, like I said, I see the extra benefit for me personally that I can then relate that understanding and that way of seeing the world, and then look backwards at the archaeology and get a better understanding. Because I mean, I only understood that stars were ancestors when I understood that the shamans have star animals. The horns are considered stars, or a connection or totemistic representation of the stars. And it started helping me understand, and then I started seeing the world in a sense through their eyes. If I looked at night and I knew nothing, I said, it's hard, but you have to remove all your biases and just see the truth. How did these people see the world? If I was these people, how would I see the world? And it really has helped me a lot.
That's true. Just talking about shamanism in context of Tamils, they're slightly totemistic also. So when there are sacrifices that happen, and usually the shamans are called bonbos in the Tamil language. That's bonbos. So that's how they pronounce it. They call them. So there's a shaman for different clans or different families. And since they're somewhat totemistic,
are they generally male or female or both?
It is mostly male. Mostly male.
So
yes,
which I would say is more as likely has something to do with individual totemism.
Possibly. I'm not sure if when the monks existed.
There's a thing that I was sorry, I didn't cut you off. But there's a thing where people get in totemistic clans that when they get born, if they're, I think it's individual, if they're say they're near a water or a tree, then they have a connection to that, or that's what I mean. So sometimes it can be more where like you said, Shiva being a clan, that would probably be more group. The fact that everybody has to do this in a sense, sort of.
Yes, possibly. I think possibly that's how that's how clans are formed. I mean, at least amongst the Gonds, that's how it happened. That what sort of animal or plant were a certain group of people close to, or how they associated with it, or what, or did the animal or the plant have any significance or any importance in the journey of that particular group. That's how the clan the totemic ancestors were divided amongst different clans. And in the Tamils, as I said, they do not follow the old ancient totemism, but what I so far have come across is just through books. I mean, I've not done my field research as yet over there, so just through books, even the shamans, when the time of sacrifice comes, there are certain animals that can be sacrificed, and certain animals cannot be sacrificed. And not just talk about sacrifice, that's a big thing. When it comes, there's a whole concept of interspecies relationship, interspecies social dwellings. So what sort of, how and what sort of animals or livestock are taken care of, that also is there. So it's not totemism in as in the ancient sense, but it's a more, I don't know what to call it, but probably a modern form of
right.
totemism.
You mean a more evolved. Well, just like the fact of bull worship. Bull worship is evident at least at Cattle Hawk, which is the first religious built city in southeast Turkey, and that's almost the area in a sense that spread agriculture. When they spread agriculture, they spread the belief in the goddess and the bull. The bull also represents like thunder in the sky. That's why, like in Turkey, they have the Taurus Mountains. In the sense that it's that southern Turkey where the beliefs and stuff kind of were developed or originated or got evolved.
Interestingly, and in shamanism, amongst the Tamangs, I'm not sure about shamanism and other ethnic groups. Somehow, what I've come across, it is in some. Of course, it's social and social cultural. It's being very male dominated. It is, although there are more egalitarian as compared to other societies that there are there in Nepal or India. But when it comes to spirit attacking, or when it comes to any black magic, or when it comes to being possessed or being entranced, somehow for some majority of reasons, it is a woman who supposedly looked upon as being possessed by a spirit.
A bad thing.
Or maybe she might be just going through
I think that actually references to me the same as the Asian thinking of the yin and the yang. The yin and the yang, to me, if you look at the original Chinese words, not that it can't mean more things, because it doesn't mean one thing. But one of the origins of it has to do with the woman being in the dark. The man is the bright. The man is upward seeking. I don't believe this, by the way. I think it's sexist, but I'm against it. I'm just saying that the yin and the yang idea, the thinking behind it, that a woman is dark, downward seeking, and more given to some sort of a base impulse, and a man's not. I think that. I remember I first read that, I was like, that is some freaking nonsense. Because, first off, if you're going to say anyone is upward seeking, it should have been women. So you're not being accurate. Men make 95% in America. I don't know about everywhere else. But in America, men make up 95% of all the violence. Men make up almost the same percentage of sexual violence. I mean, those are not upward seeking behaviors, and it's not equal. So it would certainly be, in general, I mean, just like you said about fertility, when you think of fertility in men, it's just basically sex, almost. But in fertility in women, it's more than sex, right? It has to do with child rearing. So it's, when you say, or abundance, like I was trying to say, it's more, and I'm not saying you can't do that kind of with male, but the male is not, just in those descriptions, is not, in a sense, giving as much, not doing as much in that kind of context. So I just logically, I don't know how that, without being sexist, did they come up with women are dark and downward seeking. But I had a person who was a Taoist that unfriended me because I said that. I'm like, look, here's the original Chinese, I'm just telling you, it is. I mean, I'm sorry it offends you, but it's a fact. It's sexist, and that made him so mad that he unfriended me. But so I feel bad for him. I don't try to do things to hurt people. I'm just stating the facts, and people can choose to, understand them or not.
I think that's probably because facts are very relativistic and perceptive in nature. People don't look at facts just as facts.
Right.
They always look at facts in
a reflective nature, I would say. They always look at it in a reflective nature through their emotions.
Yes.
Like if I was saying, if I said I was going to hit Jesus or I hate Jesus, it's not alive, so I couldn't physically do that anyways. So there's nobody, you know what I'm saying? So it can't actually be done. But if I say that, it's going to offend someone because, or if I said Shiva or if I said Krishna, there's like I was saying, it probably depends on the person's connection to that term. Like you said, if they're an ancestor, they may get varied, but if it's just an energy, they may feel less threatened. See, that's the kind of stuff I like to know too, because it helps me really understand. There isn't like a universal thing. The universal thing is we feel feelings. The universal thing is not how those feelings are felt and about what.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Yes, absolutely true. Yeah.
Just like you almost laughed or felt happy that I said that about stuff about, the Taoism, but my friend that was a Taoist and had been my friend knew I was an atheist for 3 years. He was fine with everything until I said that was too much.
Absolutely true. I could relate to it because I have come across, I also have similar notion about yin and yang, because if you read the features of yin and yang, it's all masculine and feminine.
Yes, it is.
Under the feminine, the elements under the feminine, it is the words are dark,
yes.
Night. So I was like, what do you mean? Dark is female or feminine energy, and night is feminine energy.
Yeah.
Like there's no during the day, because see, I personally feel at all times of the day. In fact, forget the times of the day. I think in each human form, living, non-human form, non-living for anything, there are both sorts of energies that exist. That's what my personal belief is.
Yeah, I don't call them energies the way you do. You classify them, but I don't think we're talking about that dissimilar of an idea. But yes, look at that. I mean, and what's again the yin and the yang, right? So if that was true, I can even say it's not, and it's not even true for animals. Female animals act more caring than male animals. This is just a fact.
That's true.
Now, I'm not saying that you can't have a caring man. Of course you could. Yeah, I'm a caring. I'm pretty man, and I guess I'm somewhat female. But anyways, it doesn't matter. I mean, there's people that are very male and are very caring. So I'm not saying that it has to be that. But if we look at the stats, like I said, just on who does the violence, it's not equal. It's not even close to equal.
Yes, that's because I personally feel people fail to understand that there is, when you look at a person, a human, there's biological identity, a person, male or female. Then there is a psychological identity, whether a person is feminine, masculine, feminist,
right.
Masculist, what is it? Or then there comes a social identity, which is a man or a woman. People do not understand that all of these identities exist in one person.
They can.
You cannot.
Yes.
I am a female, but I don't have much of feministic traits in me.
And I would say that I am mostly male with some female feeling, and I am very feministic.
True, absolutely true. So unfortunately,
but I wanted to say though, some of that though to me is logic. It's not like I'm doing that from an emotional only stance. It's not that I emotionally feel connected and see women as positive. I'm saying that I used to not be as positive towards women. I mean, I always was a somewhat feminist sort of, but I didn't ever try to own that term but I did care. But it was only actually the investigation of culture and religion and all this that's actually, and science, understanding more stuff, it actually got me more respect for women.
Absolutely true. I think same here. I mean, as I got into more and more into my research and got to learn more and more things, I think the internal feminine in me somehow became more and more at power with somehow the sort of masculine traits that I had. Because I always wanted to be a tomboy. I always wanted to be a man for a very long time in my life. But as I read more, I understood like how importance of me not as a woman but as a female or as a feminine.
Well, and you could also be androgynous and still feminine, and you could, you could also be like genderqueer. You could be, which I am, which is that I would say that a lot of me is male, but I also have a lot of me is female. How I approach the world, how I think, is not just one way. And
absolutely.
And I used to really feel scared about that because people would put me down for or think that I was gay. I'm not gay. I like females. I paint my nails. I I just have a more of I like flowers and poetry and
you're effeminate.
Yeah, but I don't see it as a problem because I'm also in a sense masculine. I'm very tough. I've fought before a lot of times, so I think that's why it's genderqueer and the fact that it can be both. It's not one, but I think that people make boxes. Reality doesn't.
Yes, absolutely. People make boxes. I think they do that because it becomes easy for them to identify. I don't know. Maybe I think stereotyping itself comes from the idea of people. People want it easy when it comes to identifying. They don't want it to be complex when it comes to identifying.
Well, the same thing is with religion. They don't like that I'm so complicated, that I understand so much. I'm like, yeah, but that's also what makes it more credible.
That's true. So I think this has been a really good discussion, a very insightful discussion for me over here. I got to learn about many things. There are some things I would be looking up on the internet once.
And I'll send you a blog too, because I have a blog about how totemism sort of transitions into shamanism. Because I'm very interested in that kind of stuff.
I've read that one. I think I've read that one. I think you did share with me.
No, I never shared it to you because I just wrote it, unless you read it, because I just wrote it, or did I share it? Because I only wrote it like 3 to 4 days ago.
Oh, okay, so that must be a different thing. I think that, no.
Because I wrote one on shamanism by itself, then I wrote one on the shamanism, the early shamanism, then I wrote one on shamanism, like the female. Then I did 2 on sky burials. Then I did 1 on totemism, and then 1 on similarities of animism and totemism. And then I wrote one on just recently. That's what I'm talking about. Is when totemism transition into shamanism. And I also wanted to track and show DNA how I think it moved into the places where it moved in and why it's logical to have my hypothesis. So yeah, I just wrote that.
Mm-hmm. True. So I'll have a look at it. Probably I'll request you to share the link with me on. Yes. So I'll have a look at it.
And I'm going to share your videos too. I'm going to add this video on YouTube, but I'm also going to put it on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and I'm going to make a blog. So.
All right. So I know your channel on YouTube.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Well, speaking of which,
I've seen the video. I've seen the video that you had shared with me.
What did you think of it?
It took me a while. Yeah, I saw the entire thing, and it was very interesting. It was quite interesting because I think it's important. I personally feel it's important for people to understand the journey of religion as such. It's important to understand.
Oh, yeah.
But not everyone has an interest like you and me. So yes.
Oh yeah. Well, I know. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Well, also they don't understand why it's important. They're like ethnography. They're like, who cares? Why talk to those people? Who cares? Well, no, I'm just saying. Yes. I care. I'm just. Yeah. But I'm saying I know people that they're thinking that it's not important. It is very important in understanding. I think that. There's a whole bunch of reasons why I think understanding is important.
True. I personally feel ethnography like market research. I think market research ignores ethnography a lot because it's so fast-paced. I personally feel, how can you sell a product or a service in a certain area without doing an ethnographic research? And if you're doing ethnographic research, it cannot be fast-paced, and because it has to be qualitative. I don't think you can make it qualitative by just putting it on a time bomb that it has to be done in these many days.
Right.
So I value ethnography a lot personally. So that's about me.
Well, and I appreciate what you're doing. Like I said, it really helps to understand. I think that we need more people like you, and I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much. You're being kind, and I really like the way you're trying to explain different religions, how they've come from, and their associations with each other. I think it's very, very nice but we just need more people to have that curiosity, inquisitiveness, to learn more and more about it. Because I feel as researchers we may be doing our best, but we need to find a way to be able to generate that curiosity to know between people, amongst people.
No, I agree. I like that. The know. That's just my goal. My goal is to move beyond belief. When someone says they have a belief, that means almost zero to me. Like, okay, that means nothing. You can have dogs have beliefs. I mean, the fact of generating an idea, concept that you agree with is super simple.
True.
So it's really to me is it justified? Is it warranted?
True.
Is what you're saying, as you were talking about, useful before as an axiologist? Is it useful to me?
True.
Does it have a use? And I do want to say something else too. Just because something doesn't have a use to me does not mean it has a use, or even if something has, in a sense, no use, it doesn't mean that I can just wantonly destroy things. I think that we have to, be careful in our world, because things that we do, it's in a sense a closed environment. Everything we do is, in a sense, is having or can have. Not everything, but a lot of things we do has an impact on the environment and thus on us. And as we know, if we mess up the environment, it could have a problem for our future, people too. Not just, now. Like the fact of global warming. Things that you do can have an effect in the real world. So anyways, I guess we'll call that a day. I really appreciate it, and thank you for your time.